read.
All right, let me share my screen differently. I'm recording, by the way. I just want to let you know that. This makes it easier. Is that better?
It's a yes for me.
It's a hard yes for me. I
Excellent.
love it.
I've already signed it, the petition.
Kimberly, I guess you're the only one I don't think I've heard from.
So I agree with probably 99%. But I guess my thing is that we haven't really defined like counselors, just because I know that you can have a counselor at a school, a mental health practitioner or a counselor, and they not be effective. So I'm coming from that lens, and we just can't throw counselors at schools if they're not multicultural with the kids, with the student body. And so that's the one that I have pause on.
All right, fair enough. I mean,
And I feel like with that one, I hear your concern, but I think that that's just another part of what is the approach where they define, you know, they look at and what is my word? They review whether or not that counselor is being effective. And if they, like, there's got to be some kind of review system there, because I agree that can be very dangerous if we put the wrong person in the right place, in the wrong place.
What if we added the words culturally competent in front of counselor? Is that
Or culturally responsive?
Yeah.
Because that CRT is, the principals are getting hammered on it right now because their racial equity plans basically check the box and that's it. And they're not, it's not enough to celebrate Black history and read, you know, Bud Not Buddy. You have to be intentional and you have to do it all year. And so that's something that actually was in a meeting earlier about it. And they're hammering our principals about it. So I'm sure it's going to trickle down to counselors as well.
And this is a national organization, a national demand list. So some of these things may be up to us at the local level to enforce, you know, through our site-based decision making and hiring of good board members and good superintendents and holding them accountable. So I hear you, Kimberly, and that is noted. And the same caveat could apply to the massive infusion of federal money, because just throwing money at problems doesn't solve them either. So Greg is in touch with this organization probably more than I am, although I was pleased to see that email address you gave me is somebody I'm already friends with on Facebook. Jackson Potter. I don't know if anybody else knows Jackson. I think he's with Labor Notes initially. He's out of Chicago. So
it's with Midwest Academy now.
Okay. So he's been a leader in a lot of this racial justice work in education. That's how I guess I met him earlier. So, you know, these are the types of feedback we can provide to this coalition. Dear JCPS has signed on to this coalition. Save Our Schools is about to sign on. The Kentucky Alliance is about to sign on, I believe, Greg. I think you've got some response.
Yeah, we voted to approve that. The
Okay.
Kentucky Alliance has.
Excellent, excellent. So other organizations, Journey for Justice, I think that's this page. The teachers unions are signing on, many of them. It was started by NEA, no, not NEA, AFT, the other national teachers union. So there may be some turf battles because it's not the NEA, KEA, JCTA, who knows. KEU, is KEU planning to sign on, Greg? Have we even talked about it in that group? I mean, we did their actions.
We just, yes, we need to look at that and get it officially done, but
I'm like 75% sure they're going to sign on. What about you think, Greg?
yeah, I don't see significant resistance from the group.
And NEU's on there, national educators, the national parent. So anyway, this was just an icebreaker to see who else joined us. I see Yvonne has joined us. So that was a good little temperature check to see how aligned we are.
Sorry about that.
Fine.
I forgot. I was getting things in the oven and I just ran over.
That's all right. I think Sherry Dawson Edwards is going to join us. Oh wait,
I'm
she's
here.
on the call. I'm expanding my screen as we speak. Do you want to participate, Sherry, in our little icebreaker before we start with the meeting? Did you have a chance to read that list of demands? Let me see.
No, you all can go ahead. I think you covered it.
We were just getting a feeling as to if we were all in alignment on these issues, then we kind of know we'll be able to work together on some of the things we face at the district level.
Yes, I'm in alignment.
You are in alignment?
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to switch over to my slides. These are rough slides.
Hold on one second about that. I just wanted to let you know that in the chat don't get confused by it, is a New York Times piece on disparities in cities. And at the top are the cities that count. You know, New York, Chicago. But if you go down, it knows where you are and it pulls up your city. And you can look by zip code to see what the unemployment rate is, what percentage of people who work there are essential workers, how many people are in the food industry that's been hit really hard, you know, all kinds of things you would like to know for that bullet on that one down that talks about community supports and blah, blah, blah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Oh.
So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. These are rough slides. Hopefully, as we get to the point where we're bringing this to the community, you guys can help me make them look a little bit better. I tried to follow kind of a little bit of the KEU format, the NEU and KEU format, where we ask the questions and follow an agenda. And so this is the agenda and the time amounts that I've allotted to the different slides, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to the first one. This meeting is being recorded, just so you know. Please mute your phone except when speaking. Please don't repeat what others say and yield to other speakers as soon as points are made. No ideas are bad ideas, but not all ideas may be accepted in the end. We're working on coalition building for this purpose of this call. If you're uncomfortable rocking the boat in order to demand justice, this coalition is probably not for you. And that doesn't necessarily mean publicly, by the way, but just knowing that that's the kind of work we're doing and signing on to it or being part of it. If that rocking the boat piece makes you uncomfortable, then there's probably going to be a district formed coalition that you might be interested in, but we're here to demand changes. So go around real quick. Oh, if you want to speak, type stack in the comments, or you can raise your hand like Greg just did. Go ahead, Greg.
Again, it's very tough for me to read the slides on the screen here.
What can I do to improve that?
Maybe move it to presentation mode.
All right. Let's see. Like I said, I'm not good at this part.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, good. So real quick, if you would go around and just introduce yourselves and in a minute or less, just tell us who you are so we all know who's on the call. You want me to start, I guess? I'm Gay Adelman. I'm co-founder of Dear JCPS and Save Our Schools and helping with Kentucky Educators United. My son graduated from Shawnee in 2016 and he just graduated from the United States Naval Academy as a Marine pilot this May. Kenyatta.
Hi, my name is Kenyatta Dean Bacon. I am a JCPS teacher and a mother of 3. My son just graduated from Louisville Middle High School in 2017. And yeah.
Right?
Greg Titchener, ECE teacher at Waller Williams. I've been working in the schools for 13 years, around that, but also involved with social justice and specifically racial justice. I think I'm interested in some moves like this for the district, and I'd like to see an enhanced, meaningful PD for white teachers specifically that is more than watching a movie for 45 minutes and answering 3 questions.
Sherry.
It's Cherie, but it's okay. No, it's okay. I think we've only like seen each other through Facebook. So yeah. So I'm Cherie Dawson Edwards. I am a professor at the University of Louisville in the Department of Criminal Justice, but I'm also the director of our social change minor, which means I'm also professor of social change. I also am the chair of our Department of Criminal Justice here at the University of Louisville, but I guess the role that I have that's most relevant to this is that I am a mom. And I have a 5-year-old entering Norton Elementary in a couple weeks. Well, not technically, but kind of. So I'm a little nervous about my 5-year-old. And then I also have a 14-year-old. I've done work with the district. I have done equity related work with the district for about 7 years. Most recently, my work is centered on girls of color. I've served on Westport Middle School's SPDM for 3 years and also on their racial equity plan committee as the parent member. So I'm just here. Gay asked me if I was available, so I'm here to hear what you all have to say and learn more about your thoughts about the school assignment plan.
Appreciate that. Kimberly.
I'm Kimberly Johnson. I have been an educator almost 2 decades. And it's been all in JCPS. And so I'm just excited to be here. I'm all about change, all about equity. And I will co-sign that Dr. Dawson Edwards is excellent. She has provided excellent PD for mopping when I was there and also for the district. So I just want to co-sign on that.
Thank you.
Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fisher, ECE resource teacher at Field Elementary School. I'm a product of JCPS. My mom retired from JCPS. My kids go to JCPS, so it kind of runs in our blood. But I've been pretty active with a lot of the social justice things going on lately. Earlier, I was on a Zoom meeting. We were talking more about culturally responsive teaching and how we can kind of push those changes within the schools and garner some buy-in from teachers. I think that's the most difficult part, but also how administration is they're coming down pretty hard on them. So just trying to implement change to make schools more equitable, and I'm really, really invested in the student assignment plan as well. So.
And Yvonne.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Rivera. I have 3 children, all proud products of JCPS. And I teach Spanish at Wilder Elementary, but before that, I was near Dr. Dawson Edwards. Yes. I was at Westport TAP, the late lamented. So, oh, and I'm one of the founders of Kentucky Educators United. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Thank you, everybody. And my screen moved around. I think I got everybody. Did I miss anyone? I was trying to go in order and then it shifted. All right, so the next screen up I have is just to talk about the current plan. In the most recent iteration, Supreme Court decision in 2007 said we could no longer use race alone, and it caused the district to come up with a new plan. We were already busing. We were already had an inequitable plan. The current plan has been in place since 2008. The goal of the new plan was to have no more than half of our students from any particular school come from low income, high minority, and low educational attainment. I forgot to finish adding that bullet. The plan was to take this area of West Louisville and divide it up and send students out to these different schools. As you know, one-way forced busing out of the West End, according to the color block. But in order to fill Shawnee, which is the little black dot right here in the corner there, they backfilled. So they went along the river, along Portland, and then down into the Highlands and down the highway, I believe. And what that did was caused Shawnee to end up having 87% of its population coming from low income, high minority, low educational attainment households. And so from the get-go, out of the gate, Shawnee was not equitably, the student assignment plan for Shawnee was not equitable. And we haven't stuck to that goal of keeping our schools integrated. And so we have high pockets of high minority, high poverty schools, as well as high pockets of high white populations, high income, et cetera. So just a recap on that. And then I have some slides. Oops, it won't let me because I'm in presentation mode. Sorry about that. Real quick. But if you can't see it, it may not be any good. I have a couple other slides that kind of just compare and contrast the alternative school assignment plan, as well as an article that I can post some other way. But this is, oops, I'm totally messing up my slides. This article here, let me move these out of the way and then I'll go back into presentation. See it just real quick. Just as a article about the 87% being assigned to Shawnee when that plan first came out. So I just was sharing that. So then this screen talks about the proposed plan. So what they have for the last 2.5 years been working on, the Student Assignment Committee has been meeting and has come up with a plan. I have a little video that we're going to watch. It's 3 minutes. It's Dr. Polio talking about some things that I hadn't seen before, so it's a little bit fresh take on some of this, so I thought it was worth sharing. But basically, we're talking about dual resides, and I think everybody on this call probably knows what that means, but essentially that map that we saw with the color block, those students can now have the same opportunity to choose to attend a school close to home, like an advantage that I have. Oh, Kimberly, I wanted you to talk before you left. Do you have time? I'm going to ask you to talk, and I'm going to interrupt what I'm saying so you can say something.
So what did you want me to talk about?
I wanted you to talk about how the root causes of discrimination are really what's behind, like making a few tweaks to student assignment plan versus getting at root causes. We talked about earlier.
So the root cause is racism.
So fix racism and we can fix it.
If we fix racism, we are going to be billionaires if we can fix that. But Dr. Dawson Edwards, she could talk about that white supremacy, and she would even introduce you to the triangle that she's shown before to help out the group.
All right.
I can do that. Maybe not tonight, but I can certainly do it.
So I gotta go to my other meeting. It's nice to meet you all. I'm sorry.
Good to see you.
She was fired up earlier today, and I was like, I want you to talk about that on this call. But basically, we were just discussing how these proposals don't go far enough. It gives a dual option for families in the West End to attend a school close to home. But in order to have that option, we have to build more schools in the West End in order to accommodate those students. So we know that we need a tax increase in order for that to happen. And then there's also a proposal to stop allowing push-outs from the traditional schools. And frankly, these are things that I don't even think the board should have to approve. This is such no-brainer type solutions and is so lackluster compared to the input that the Student Assignment Committee worked very hard on to provide to the board. So before we move on, I did want to play this video, and then we're going to come back and ask a question. We're going to go around the room and just spend a minute answering the question at the bottom. Other than not going far enough, are there any concerns with these proposed changes? But before we answer, let's take 3 minutes and watch this video.
We are envisioning a new JCPS. All summer long, we're going to be taking you on a journey of how we are envisioning the future of this district. It's bold and it's major change, and we want to show you what these changes will be and how it's going to positively impact our students. Here I am down at the Academy at Shawnee. There's so much activity going on right now. $80 million renovation that is taking place. It's amazing to see the construction going on. I've envisioned this for many years, and it's finally happening. It really shows the investment that we are making in West Louisville. On the 25th of this month, we're actually going to have a community meeting so that we can get feedback on our proposal to build a new elementary school at the brand new YMCA on Broadway. We're going to have a school connected to that on the back of that property. We're so excited about that new elementary school. And this is just one of the investments. So much more needs to take place in West Louisville. And it really is going to get into student assignment. What we have found is all across the city, students are able to attend a school close to their home. The only group of students who haven't been able to do that are students in West Louisville. We want to provide that choice to our families in West Louisville. We think that's so important for student belonging. Students will still be able to choose a school outside of that community, but they'll also be able to choose one close to home. This is going to require significant investment from JCPS and from our community. We may have to build a second high school. We will have to build a middle school very shortly that will be proposed to our Board of Education, and possibly a second middle school. We want these buildings to be innovative and learning environments to support kids and their learning in this community. And to show you this, come on and take a trip with me. I'd like to show you one of our problems with our current student assignment plan. So after a 4-minute walk, here I am at the corner of South 41st and Larkwood Avenue, 1 block away from the entrance of the Academy at Shawnee. And as a matter of fact, if you look over my shoulder, you can actually see the building of the Academy at Shawnee from these houses, the front porches of these houses, 1 block away. These students are assigned to different schools all over the county. So a student who lives at this corner, they would be assigned for middle school to Cameron Middle School in East Louisville. And unfortunately for high school, they would be assigned to Doss High School in the South End. So this student would have to travel all over the county through their educational journey through JCPS. We still, in our proposal, want to give these students the opportunity to attend school in another part of the community. But we also want to give them the opportunity to attend the Academy at Shawnee, the newly renovated Academy at Shawnee, which our board has put $40 million to, and give these students the opportunity to attend this school. Our new student assignment proposal would give these students this opportunity. We're envisioning a new JCPS. These are just a few of the major and bold changes that we will be proposing to dramatically improve student outcomes for our students all over this county. But it's going to require investment from all of us. Let's make this happen.
I hope you guys can hear that okay. I think you're probably having to hear my sound off my PC come through my laptop, which probably caused a bit of a delay. But I want your feedback on these slides, because hopefully as we continue to do this coalition building, we'll be taking this presentation out. We'll make it better, we'll make it more robust, and we'll continue to share what ideas work and fine tune things. So I wanted to just throw something out there, see what sticks, and get your feedback and ask you to help me make it better. So before we move on, other than not going far enough, are there any concerns with the proposed changes above?
I'm just, maybe I missed it. Where did the 6,000, where did the number 6,000 come from?
I believe that is the number of students living in the West End that are being bused to schools outside of the West End at present. And I may have remembered it wrong, because I did pull that out of my hat today. I'm pretty sure that's right, though. Does anyone know? All right, I'll double check it. We obviously need to build more high schools and middle schools in the West End.
Is there still do they still have the plan to build out in the East End though? That big middle school complex? I know that Crosby's overcrowded, but a lot of that is because they're busing kids from the West End. I mean, they're like busting at the seams.
When I was a member of Eros, we actually spoke at board meetings and encouraged them to not vote on any more expansions in any other parts of town until we had a student assignment plan in place. But they did it anyway. So
I don't know if Crosby's busting at the seams anymore. My daughter was just there 2 years ago. And the numbers, I know at one point when they were busting, it seems that they were having classes in the cafeteria and stuff like that, and they're not doing that anymore.
Oh, okay, that's great. Because I had my friend, her daughter, I mean, they were like spilling out into the hallways when she was there. So hopefully, yeah,
That's
so many kids. Yeah.
it does make sense to wait until you've reassigned students to new schools before you build more schools to accommodate a changing population that's going to most likely be declining. So I am with you on that.
I think it's also worth mentioning the circular. So if we're building new schools, like the former superintendent was proposing, then we're looking at empty seats in a building. And if you're constantly busing kids from the West End to the East End and filling up schools that way, well, then the data is going to show that's where we need to build the new schools. And I think that was the justification for Ramsey and whichever Stouffer, which is systemic racism.
Indeed. All right. I'll move on to the next slide. If you think of any other objections to the existing proposals, please circle back and let us know. The objectives of today's call: seize the time. We are here to build consensus around a list of demands for the student assignment plan and form a coalition and strategy to present these demands to JCPS. Bring together authentic grassroots organizations, promote Black and Black allied agendas. And what I mean by that is Dear JCPS is a Black allied organization, and we have a list of demands. And so as we come together as a coalition, we look at other groups that are members of the coalition and promote each other's lists of demands and agendas that we can all agree to. Dismantle systemic and institutional racism that a couple of tweaks to a student assignment plan and building new schools won't fix, because like Kimberly was saying, the underlying problem is racism. This is just rearranging some deck chairs, if you will. And the time to act is now. And what I mean by that, and I put a few little hashtags and things down there underneath to kind of emphasize why the time to act is now, but we've been hit with a pandemic that has not only exposed but exacerbated the disparities in our communities, including the virtual learning gaps. We also have right here in our city and across the country and across the globe, there's a movement for Black lives, but we have a front row seat, obviously, because not only because of justice for Breonna and other injustices that have taken place here in Louisville, but we also have a Senate race that's heating up that we have a key player. The presidential race is coming up regarding the November election. So there's just a lot of interest in what's happening in Kentucky and in Louisville in particular. And this tax increase being on the ballot is part of that November election momentum. And so because the student assignment plan is, in order to build schools, is contingent upon the tax increase, what we're doing today really continues to be negotiated until November. And that's really the purpose of the coalition, is to try to get in front of the board before they vote on August 18th on these changes, but not stop at that. Like, once we identify what our list of demands are, if we don't have all of it spelled out by the 18th, maybe we will. Maybe we're going to just roll right through this and it's going to be amazing. But you know, we've got a lot of other competing things that require our attention right now, and it's just been really hard to do coalition building around complex topics like these. So we're going to just do the best we can because we've run out of time. August 18th is coming and going whether we're prepared or not. So let's see what sticks and act as best we can. So I want to do a little around the room, spend a couple of minutes each sharing what you identify to be the biggest concerns with the existing student assignment plan. And I don't mean the proposal, I mean the plan we've been living with for the last decades, not just the one I showed you, but historically. What are your concerns with student assignment as it exists today? I guess I take that back. I want to talk about the current plan and what your concerns are. But if it's something that's historical because it's compounded, then include that. But then also, what are some solutions? Like if you've identified that we have this particular gap, maybe you already have an idea. Here's a way we can close this gap if we would just do these things. So I kind of want to give everybody a couple of minutes to talk about what you see as problems and solutions, and we're gonna take these down as notes and try to refine them into see if they fit into some demands that we can make of the district. Is there anybody who wants to go first?
Well, since nobody else is gonna jump up here and ready to chat, I will lead the conversation. I will tell you that growing up as a product of JCPS, my mother was not from the United States. She, when she got here, of course, talking to other parents, she found out that the best schools for your kids to go to is the magnet or the traditional schools. And so I remember, as far back as my memory allows me, my big sister went to Shawnee High School. When it was time for my brother to go to elementary school, he went to Roosevelt Perry, and then from Roosevelt Perry, he got into Great House, which ended up not being a good fit for him. And so he came out. I started at Roosevelt Perry and ended up at Great House come my third grade year. And busing me, I felt I got access to a good education. I went to Great House, I went to Barrett, I went to Mail. So of course, once I became an adult, you know, they say train them up in the way in which they should go. So I thought that doing the same for my children would be helpful. So I applied for my daughter to go to Great House, and she was there kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and she struggled. And even as an educator, I tried to work with the administration and the teachers there to provide interventions for her that I saw as an educator were what she needed, but they didn't want to work with me. And so I had to pull her out in the middle of her third grade year because, of course, all they were concerned about was how she was going to test at the end of the year, since that was an accountable grade. So busing her, as according to what school options she had, ended up not being a good option for her. And so I brought her back to the neighborhood school. Now, I say that because also growing up, we became painfully aware that unless you live in the high rent district, your kids are going to get into schools that may not be as affluent, have the resources available, nor the teaching staff that is not just culturally competent, but academically aware of how to reach the kids, and so, or have the same passion or concern. So I went in with this jaded view that I had to have my kids in a particular area of town in order for them to get a good quality education. So for 10 years, we paid more than the equivalent to a mortgage in rent so that my kids could remain at Middletown Elementary, which was a fabulous school. I love it. I sing their praises all the time because we had a great experience there. So when I think about other kids having access to a neighborhood school that gives them what we was able to give, I kind of get nervous and concerned about whether or not the neighborhood schools are going to have the same resources, or not just materials, but human resources that is going to give them a quality education. So my main concern is yes, I don't like it that, kids in the West End have to get bussed all over the place. Dr. Polio's video showing kids going to camera and then to DOS, I mean, that makes it difficult for them to build friendships that'll last a lifetime, to be able to build, an awareness of their community and what's around. Just even the bus rides to and from school every day, if you're going on two different sides of town through middle school and then to high school, you're not even exposed to all of the things on a regular basis that exist in your community if you decide to look out the window. I'm concerned about kids being bussed around, but I also want to make sure that they're going to get a quality education in their neighborhood schools. So that's my spiel on the student assignment plan. I don't know. I'm learning more and more about the way that the student assignment plan works, but at the same time, I'm equally concerned that we are not doing it right now. When I moved into my neighborhood now, it literally took us months for us to choose an area of town based on the average sale price of the home in that area, based on what their homeschooler resides would be, and what do I know about those schools, and whether or not I want them at those schools, and then to choose where we lived at. And my kids didn't get into the reside school. He ended up at a school that I absolutely did not want him to go to, and I had to file an appeal in order to move him from there back into our reside school. And I filed the appeal and said lots of prayers and asked all my prayer warriors to pray with me, just because I really did not want him at the school that he was originally supposed to go to. So it's a huge problem to try and choose just where you live at, just based on where your kids can go to school, and then for it not to work out. Nothing is predictive. It's not a definitive, yes, you live here, your kid's gonna go here. And that makes everything difficult.
Who else?
I'll speak up. This was, I guess, the story that I'm thinking of is about parental engagement and the ability. So with the current plan, I remember my son went to Chansey Elementary, which most of you probably know that's far out by Murphy Lane by the Ford plant. So at any rate, I just remember one time, and I don't live far from there, so it wasn't a problem for me, and I have a flexible job as a professor, but I remember going to a meeting for the PTA. It was like a subcommittee, and they were talking about getting more parents involved in this fundraiser. And so they had this bright idea that they wanted to have a lunch meeting, and they can order pizza and they can have it at 12 in the middle of the day. And Chansey has lots of students that are bused from far, far away to go that far out, and is not that accessible, and certainly wouldn't be accessible for most people during the day, parents to come at noon for pizza. And so as a, first time parent of a JCPS student, I was just appalled. And I'll be very transparent. My sister was the principal at Chansey at the time, and not that reflected on her at all, but I was just in this PTA meeting, like, who are you people? Like, how do you think that is making parents be able to be accessible and engaged in the school. And that's just one of the first things that bothers me about our current student assignment plan, is that it's just not possible. And then the other piece of it is that people have to recognize when they are contributing to other things. So that's the whole like centering perhaps whiteness, like it was a whole bunch of white women who decided that they wanted to have a lunch pizza meeting and didn't even think about how that impacted their parents of color. And so even though, I have mixed feelings about the current plan versus the new plan, I see lots of positives about kids going across the district. I don't like the feeder patterns for sure, because certainly my child has benefited. I mean, he went to Westport, and he's certainly benefited from the kids, as far as just being more open to everybody, because there are kids from West Louisville, lots of kids from West Louisville at Westport, and not just the suburban Black kids, not saying there's anything wrong with them. I was one of them too. But I don't know. I struggle with what's the right balance, but I do know our current plan does not give parents a great opportunity to participate in schools if their kids are 30, 35 minutes away and things are occurring during the school hours. And I know that I've seen, for instance, Westport would have PTA meetings, or they would have things at the table, parent teacher conferences at the table. They tried different things, and I commend them for trying that, and I helped participate and put together some of those things. But even then, there was low parental engagement or participation, and I think people attributed it to the parents, but it was just not being part of the culture of the school. And you cannot just move the school to another location and you're never part or ingrained in the fabric of the school, because you can't be in other ways. And so I think, to me, that's our big struggle with our current student assignment plan, and the assumption that it's the parents don't want to, when it's really about being embedded in a part of the school, including the school building. That's all I have. Well, I have more, but I'll be quiet.
I can go. I'm a product of JCPS, although I went to Trinity for high school here in Louisville, and I was bused. I was bused to Corge Taylor in 4th and 5th grade, and it was a different experience. I ended up part of an advanced program class that there were 3 African Americans in my class, and outside of that, we were the segregated white class that ended up at Corge Taylor. And it was, but I learned from the experience, and I wonder if that's something we consider when looking at suggestions, is can we look at, and I know it's not going to be popular with the East End crowd, but I think we at least need to raise that question. Can we do some busing that includes getting kids from the East End to Central and West End schools?
What years were that you were bused?
I'm sorry?
What years were you bused?
Oh, goodness. 77, 78, something in that range.
And they stopped the 50-50 in 1984.
Yeah, I was bused out to Young in the 80s, I think, for elementary school.
But it was, it was a learning experience for me, and I grew to appreciate a variety of cultures that I probably would not have been so likely to do had I not had that experience. I think there's touching on a couple things Kenyatta was talking about. I think there's a dynamic in town that if you're a parent in the know, you know how to navigate the system, and there's certain schools that you're going to position your kids to get to that magnet high school that you're aiming for. And I don't, this is not a knock on magnets in themselves, but I think we need to be aware of that dynamic, because it affects the way a lot of people think. And if we were providing an equitable education system, then we wouldn't have that game in play, period. So I don't know if that means doing away with magnets or what that means, but I think it's something we need to be aware of. I do like the benefits there. I think there's pluses and minuses that come with neighborhood schools, and no doubt it's an opportunity to build more community with students and parents. But I am skeptical at the same time, because I think if we don't keep a careful eye on it, then it becomes separate but equal, given our fourth highest segregated city status, and that makes me cautious. And the fact that neighborhood schools have been a far right agenda item for a while, I think so let's be cautious of that and be aware. PTA, I was at Atkinson. I've done a lot of bouncing, like 1 or 2 years from school to school, but I was at Atkinson, which I'm pretty sure we were a very high percent residential or kids that lived in the area, and our parent involvement was it was all but non-existent. So just because we build them doesn't mean it's going to happen. And maybe that's, we need to be intentional about that when and if we get the new schools in the West End. Just my thoughts.
If you build it, doesn't mean, I wrote that down before you said that. If you build it, doesn't mean they'll come. You're so right. Yvonne, you wrote stack in the feed a while back. I'm sorry I ignored you. I didn't see you there. And then Morgan. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. The girl can be taught. I think we should always realize that there's room everywhere for everyone. And let me explain. I went to junior high and high school with rich Jewish kids. And I eventually, this is no brag, just fact, I went to an Ivy League college. I went to an Ivy League university and got my master's there. That would not have happened for me if I had stayed at Miami High, nicknamed Havana High. I went to school with kids who taught me. My father put tires on buses. He didn't know jack. Who taught me how to be middle class, who taught me how to fill out a FAFSA, who told me I needed extracurricular activities or the colleges. I didn't know any of this. Would it take, and taught at the time it was the BEOG, and taught me how to fill that out, how to study for the SAT, how to do all of that. These are things I would not have learned from poor kids like me at Miami High. So how do we export that? Because that's what we want to do. We want to help kids like me be able to make it.
Morgan.
I think for me, quickly, the magnet schools, and I don't know the number, but how many seats would that open if they serve the resides area? Considering manuals all magnet. And I don't think that means that we get rid of those programs or anything like that. But I mean, ultimately, the way we identify gifted and talented kids is biased. It's absolutely 100% biased. And a lot of our students of color across the board, a lot of our twice exceptional learners who would rise to the occasion at schools like manual don't get to go to manual. They're falling through the cracks. So, I think it's great they have those programs, but I think it's completely inequitable, and they need to be servicing the kids that live in those areas. So that's just my comment.
Anyone else want to add anything on to either problems you see or potential solutions that we could come up with? And I have some slides that I'm going to share with you, things that I've collected from people over the years that I think touch on most of what you guys have said, plus a few things I wrote down that I don't have on there yet. If you're ready, I'll move to that and then we can see what's missing. So the current set of challenges or problems, the plan is inequitable and structurally racist, period, point blank. The disparities between the schools and the students are exacerbated and unseen. So what I mean by that is we have PTAs that can mobilize parents, raise funds, get volunteer hours, get their corporation to sponsor the lacrosse uniforms, you name it. So a lot of that is unseen, but it's also compounded year after year after year. The gift that Ballard Alumni Association made last night to our board to help pay for the football stadium is a good example. And kudos and props to Ballard for being able to do that. Nobody wants to take that away from them. Certainly as a supporter of public schools, I love the fact that my tax dollars didn't pay for that, that somebody donated that instead. So I don't begrudge any schools that are successful in fundraising and getting donations and getting community involvement. But I think we need to quantify it and not sweep it under the rug and not ignore it. And I actually sent some inquiries to the district asking if we'd ever done a REAP on the student assignment plan, and the answer is no. We've done it on pieces of it, but not as a whole. And one way that we could address some of the disparities in these unseen and exacerbated situations is by having a more equitable distribution of students and families to schools. And so that's a challenge. And I'm trying to explain what I meant by it. And then obviously we don't have enough schools in the West End. If we were to have a dual resides program and make it go into effect immediately, we wouldn't have enough schools for the students to attend if everybody decided to take advantage of it. But we can't assume, like Greg said, if you build it, doesn't mean they're going to come, because we have vacant seats in our West End schools currently. And so why? We have to look at why, and not just say, oh, well, we built the schools, why didn't that solve the problem? There's not the right kinds of programs for families that live in the West End. We have to make sure we have exceptional programs, just like we have in our magnets and in our schools in the East and South End schools, parts of the town. And there's also perceptions. I encounter perceptions about Shawnee all the time, and I knew better. And that's part of how I became such an outspoken activist, is because it pissed me off that people didn't know the truth. And so perception is reality, though, when it comes to attracting families to our schools, and not just East End white families or South End or whomever, but even attracting West End families to send their kids to a West End school. There is the perception and reality that the schools are better in other neighborhoods, and we don't want to deny and deprive students of those opportunities. But also that reputation. My son being white, when people asked him where he went to school and he said Shawnee, he automatically got, oh, you must be at the aviation magnet. Well, there were lots of black kids in the aviation magnet too, but if their parents would tell me that they were concerned, if their son said or daughter said I went to Shawnee, they'd get a different look, because people assume that they're there because they couldn't get in anywhere else, right? So we have to break down those perceptions and do a better job making sure people know about the great programs. And we have to get rid of the emphasis. We place too much emphasis on test scores, and so that creates a lot of adult-centered problems. People gaming the system, people creating rules that make it harder to get into some schools, and sweeper schools end up taking everyone else. And so one of the problems is emphasis on test scores in those schools in particular. That's harmful, it's abusive, and it takes away valuable resources that kids in trauma and kids coming from the lower socioeconomic and lower educational attainment households need. And then that also leads to loss of teachers, quality teachers. The retention is harder in high poverty, low performing schools because of the pressures and the games and the criticisms and the no matter what you do, it's never good enough. And so, and then there's newer teachers get assigned to the schools that nobody else wants. And so, you know, as teachers get experience, then they get to choose their schools and they go to easier schools, if you will. A lot of them do, not all of them, but because of the pressure on test scores, that definitely is part of the problem. And then another problem is, and I think I repeated myself there, teachers recruiting, newest teachers at struggling schools, the failing schools narrative, SBDM and parent involvement. We talked about that earlier. And then we have people that just have a misconception about JCPS, and no matter what you say, they say end busing. Like that's just their answer to everything. So we have to have a meaningful conversation out in our community about the student assignment plan as well as the tax increase, and not just keep that conversation buzzing every year. Like in order to end busing, we have to have a tax increase is kind of the narrative. And if they don't pass the tax increase, well, you know, you snooze, you lose kind of thing. So, but that isn't necessarily for this talk. For this coalition, I'm just kind of closing the loop. We also have challenges with gentrification. We have to be sure that any changes to student assignment aren't going to just feed the gentrification agenda that many are pursuing in the West End. And we still haven't addressed root causes. And we haven't earned the Black vote on the tax increase. Many people, I think Kimberly said she wasn't in favor of the tax increase. I don't know if that was when she was on this call or an earlier call. But I've been speaking to a lot of people in the Black community that just don't trust that the district is going to spend the money the way that they say they're going to spend it. And, you know, just because we think these are the best solutions for the West End doesn't necessarily mean that it is. So we have to be in that Black community. We have to be in the West End community. We have to make sure we've heard concerns and raised those and elevated those concerns to the board prior to the November vote. So those are some of the current challenges. I wrote down a few more that I think were newer. And some of that came from the lack of transparency. I think something Kenyatta said about having to file an appeal. When you file those appeals, you also don't believe that it wasn't because you knew somebody or didn't know somebody. We just don't trust the process. And then the gifted and talented evaluation process is also biased. So those are also some more challenges that I wanted to add. And then the magnets. I do have magnets mentioned in the next slide, but again, what Greg was saying about magnets, and I see you said you should clarify parent participation through SBDM and PTA negligible. We did see a lot of parents for events like math night, et cetera. That's good.
I gave Atkinson more of a black eye than I meant to.
Okay.
When I said parent involvement was negligible, that meant at the leadership level. We did see a lot of families show up for math night and literacy night and that sort of thing,
Right.
which would be good community building events.
Absolutely, absolutely. A couple of things that I have on this slide, just so you know what you're looking at. I have a copy of the email where I asked about the REAP today, and because those REAPs don't exist, if anybody has a good relationship with a board member and we could maybe get a board member to ask for some of this information, that would be really helpful. My board member relationships are not very good right now, so if I could delegate that, that'd be really great. And then the other map that I have up here is the student assignment plan after a decade of the map that you saw. This is what our alternative school map looks like. And as you can see, most of the students going to alternative schools are coming out of the West End. So we created a problem by having a student assignment plan that maybe does benefit some, but we haven't looked at the big picture. We haven't looked at how it affects everyone. And this is kind of a snapshot cause and effect, if you will, of some of the disparities of being on buses longer. If you're going to be on a bus longer, you're going to have a greater chance of having a bus detention. You're going to have a greater chance of having discipline or attendance issues, and difficulties possibly keeping your grades up. So we see how that manifests. So the next slide is some of the proposed changes that we've been talking about. And as I mentioned, as the first problem, our current plan is structurally racist, and simply adding dual resides so that now West End families have choice, just like East and South End families have had all along, really is more of a step toward, I'm not even going to say toward equity, I'm going to say toward equality. And if we wanted to have equity, we would flip the script. We would create a scenario where more people were traveling from east to west and south to west. We would make the schools so amazing that people would be willing to drive farther, take off work, come to the meeting, whatever, because that's what equity looks like. We would completely flip it. And I know Greg mentioned that would never fly. Maybe not, but if we don't ask, we certainly are not gonna go there. And what I like about flipping the script too is that it brings people to the table, even if it's because they're afraid something's about to change. At least they come to the table, they're part of the conversation, but it also highlights the hypocrisy. If we say, let's flip the script, and a bunch of East and white people say, no, we could never do that, we get to cock our head and say, wait a minute, it's been okay that we did it to Black families for the last however many years. And so, you know, it kind of at least raises some discomfort so we can have some more productive, meaningful conversation. Let me see what some of these notes are real quick. Morgan says, we just need high stakes testing to be taken away for good. Yes, I agree. I really believe that would make things easier in every facet of JCPS, including student assignment. Yes, I agree. And Kenyatta also agrees. Before I move too fast through all these slides, does anybody have any thoughts about this, or did I leave anything else off of the problems and challenges slide?
I had a question, and then I've got to jump off to get ready for another Zoom myself, but do we have a feel, has there been research and testing done to see if East End parents are forced to or asked to start busing their children, does the district fear an exodus to private schools? And I wonder what kind of role that plays in the decision making. I'd like to know. But I don't know any firsthand knowledge. I'm just curious.
Yeah, and of course they do. But I think, again, a lot of that is based on stereotypes and assumptions, and without actually having these conversations. So
if I can be a vulnerable parent for just a minute, I live in the East End Louisville. I live walking distance from Norton Elementary. And I don't know, my daughter is going to Norton, that's our reside school. But I remember with my son, like I said, I was a first-time parent of a school-age child. And I remember with my son, I didn't want him to go to Norton. I wanted him to go to Chansey. And so at the time I had to fill out this form to say, no, I don't want to do Norton. I want to go to Chansey. And then my sister, who I'm one of those people that knows how to navigate the system. You know, my sister was like, well, what are these other schools? Oh, those are cluster schools. So you don't get in Chansey, then they may put you in these schools. And I remember, and I'm a huge public school advocate. I'm an equity trainer. I remember my gut as a parent, oh, no. I don't want him to go into these schools. Like, that's why I bought a house out here, you know? And so if who I am, my gut reaction was that, then I can guarantee you my neighbors who don't look like me and don't have some of the lenses I have, their gut reaction is going to be even worse. And people don't talk about that, right? It's not sexy for me to admit that even though I want what's best for all kids in JCPS, that as a parent of my own kid, my gut reaction was what I wouldn't have expected from me. And so I would say that, and I know about those schools. My nephews went to one of those schools. I knew the principal at another of those schools, and I still didn't want my kid to go to that school. And so it's not only about misinformation. This is this idea of what I had for my child, and I bought this house before I even had a child with this idea. And I know that there are going to be parents that will be resistant because their idea is now shattered. And I'm not saying that they can't be moved to, be on the right side of, this, because certainly my child did get into Chansey. But I was, really had to reconcile with myself. Why did I feel like this? And then come to a place where if he did end up at the other schools, then I would just have to be a very active parent, and I would just have to do all these things. And that was my response. But I don't think my neighbors would have responded in the same way.
Absolutely. And I hear you. And I started with the most radical idea. And hang on, Yvonne, I'll get to you. I started with the most radical idea because I kind of like to shift to the other extreme, and then we kind of work our way back towards the middle. I don't know that that's a proposal that we would make as a demand, but it could still be part of our narrative. Like as we start talking about some of these changes, we could kind of come back with, well, I guess we could always just flip the
But you
script,
can have that.
have it be a looming kind of possibility, even if it's somewhere down the road in the future. Like we could say,
I don't oppose it. I just know the gut reaction, because
Sure.
I've had the gut reaction.
but Gray has done it and Morgan has done it. And I am really interested in finding more stories like that to showcase that people that had these experiences, actually they benefited from them. Like we can showcase some of those stories and make that part of our messaging as well. And again, none of this is set in stone. I just wanted to throw a whole bunch of examples of proposed changes out there so we as a coalition can see what is something we can all settle on and get behind, and then get out there and get others to buy on with us, so that when we go to the board, we've got momentum. And Yvonne, you had your hand up.
I wanted to talk about how we can institute what I got in high school intentionally. For years, for 14 years, I taught at the two TAP schools, South Park and Westport TAP. And we did the things the rich kids did for me. It was 76% free and reduced lunch. So most of the kids were poor, no matter what color they were. And so we taught them all kinds of things that they did not learn in their regular high school. I had girls that I'm the one who taught them how to write a term paper, because their school didn't do that. We filled out a FAFSA with them. We helped them know what was on the compass test. What do you need to know to pass this? Helped them with ACT questions. Did things intentionally. Talk to help them write their college essay. Did this and that and the other. Help them learn to write a resume. Where they came from. That was for the kids in the advanced track. They weren't going to waste it on kids like that. So if you knew you were going to get that no matter where you went, if you knew that actually you were going to get more things if you went to that new school, if you knew that that was going to try to be the second manual, music and art and all that stuff, if I don't think in every case you can build it and it will come.
I agree.
In some cases, yeah.
So let's go through this list of proposed changes and see if any of them address your concern, Yvonne, because I think, thanks, Greg. I know you got to go. I'll circle back with you and see what you think about some of these as well. But I think the things you brought up, Yvonne, are very important and maybe are addressed simply by addressing root cause issues. So, for example, I'm going to jump down to the bottom of the slide because I think there's, and Sherry may even know some, Sherry? Okay. Sherry may know some examples of some research that supports this because I've seen it floating around where when you have integrated schools, everybody learns from each other. And so what we have right now is segregated schools again with extreme pockets of poverty and socioeconomic and racial disparities. And so if we had some kind of goal, if we asked the district to set a student mix ratio goal that included race and socioeconomic and any other, I put other in case we decide as a group that we want to focus on some other areas like educational attainment of the parents. Those are the 3 things they use right now. If we set a goal of plus or minus 15% of whatever the district makeup looks like, and then when you've got a school in the West End that's still at 30 or 40% away from the district averages, then you infuse more cash, or not necessarily cash, but resources. You infuse more money and supports, smaller class sizes, like do things that parents in the East End are going to be like, why can't I have that? And then the answer is, you can. You just have to drive there. Maybe we don't even offer busing because we're making these opportunities so great that families are going to do whatever. Maybe it's shifting the start times. Maybe it's adding the Y-Pass equivalent at one of the schools in the West End. What do we need to do to invest in these schools that people create this mix that is like what you're talking about, Yvonne, at every single school? And more carrot, less stick. And if in 10 years we haven't met those goals, then we have kind of a looming threat out there that if we haven't met those goals in 10 years, we're going to start reinstituting the busing. And so then district leaders and principals and parents and whomever start looking for solutions that they can live with because they know in 10 years this plan is going to be implemented upon them if we don't act. And again, to Cherie's point, we don't have to bus everyone from Norton Commons to the West End. If 5 or 10% of our population took advantage of that, you'd get more integration in our schools. So what do we need to do to achieve diverse integrated schools authentically and without forcing people to be bused, especially without forcing people out of our most vulnerable community, and instead if anybody's got to be bused, it should be the other way. But so let me go through the rest of these items on the list. And Yvonne has to go too. All right. And I know where to find you, Yvonne, if you do need to drop off. Okay, so back to the top. These 2 things to me, after the flip the script, are also things that the district could do without even a board approval. Like this is something that should have been done a long time ago. The first one is to remove the application barriers so that if you live in a non-satellite resides, and you know what I mean by that, if you live in a district where your reside school is not in your contiguous bubble, then you shouldn't have a barrier to apply. You shouldn't have, I think right now you have to have a 2.5 grade point average, no behavior and no attendance issues, or limited attendance and behavior issues. And again, back to that, if you've been on a bus, your chances of having those things, and you have dark skin, your chances of having those things happen to you because the perception, not because of the behavior, but because the perception, because we have teachers that are not culturally competent and bus drivers who are not culturally competent, they respond differently to students on the bus who have darker skin. So we know that happens, and if we could remove that barrier and just let students apply to attend school closer to home, we could help them eliminate some of those obstacles that have caused them to be in that condition, in that state in the first place. I had a second thought and I can't remember what it is. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then the dual resides. Okay, so we have a dual resides proposal that says if you live in the West End, you can now keep the school that you've been assigned, or you can go to school close to home without this application barrier. And if you live out in the East End, you don't have the same. I'm smiling because I'm trying to pretend like I'm an upset white person. Well, I have the same opportunities because there probably will be somebody who says that. And the answer to that, again, is you do. You can also go to Shawnee. Like, let's go ahead and give everyone in the East and South End a dual school, whatever a school in the West End would be. So like everybody who's assigned to Eastern would also be assigned to Shawnee. And maybe there's somebody who is at Eastern that was like, you know, that bully has just had I'm done with that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. What are my options? Well, you could go to Shawnee. Well, for the first time, that student might actually look at Shawnee with some kind of consideration that they wouldn't have if it hadn't been suggested. And again, if 10 students from the Eastern District chose Shawnee, that's enough to bring active parents with connections and transportation and work during the day and or not work during the day, work from home or stay home mom or whatever that can boost up the PTA and serve on the SPDM and call and complain when they notice that the broken down bus has been sitting there for a week and something that would have never happened at Eastern, blah, blah, blah. You know, those are that's all it takes is just a little bit. So I would like to suggest that at the August 18th meeting, because this is such a no-brainer, when they're assigning a dual reside school to West End families, they also assign to East End families so that we create an opportunity to keep our schools integrated. Because one of the things that we are instantly going to do when we institute this dual resides plan is resegregate our schools. We know this. So what are we doing? What's the flip side of this proposal that will at least put some kind of counterbalance? Because a lot of people value having the busing in their community. A lot of Black people that I speak to say we fought for that. You know, that's people have run for school board based on dismantling student, you know, ending busing, and they lose. So we know the community attitude towards integrated schools is strong and supported. So I don't think it's wise to go out to the community and dismantle something that people appreciate without putting a counterbalance in place. And so I just really like the idea of everybody having a dual resides. And if you're in the East or South End, your dual school would be somewhere in the West End. So those are thoughts. I'll pause for a second before I move on to the rest to see what you guys think of those two. Oh, I know what else I was going to say about the application barrier. So at Shawnee, we would have on the first day of school every year, we would have, and we only have about 600 kids, 550 kids in the school. First day of school, we would have about 100 kids show up, thinking that this was their school, pretending like they thought this was their school, hoping they could get in, maybe just because it's closest to their home and it's where their parents wanted them to go, despite the fact that they were assigned to PRP or Ballard or whatever. We had a lot of kids come to the first day. And we would turn them away. We would send them away. And in the 4 years that my son was there, we went through half a dozen or more principals, unfortunately. So I got to see all kinds of leadership styles and approaches to some of these disparities and the overemphasis on test scores and the bullying administration and the intimidation tactics that were used. And so I get it. I get why principals would be resistant if you're a West End school to remove an application barrier and suddenly open up the floodgates and have a massive number of students with behavior and discipline and low grades suddenly attending your school. But again, if we get rid of the emphasis on test scores and it couples with these other things we've been talking about, that should no longer be a problem. If by every student with this certain demographic you take in, you get smaller class sizes and an extra counselor and another arts program. And we just infuse the necessary supports into these schools so that taking on additional students in trauma, for example, no longer is seen as a bad thing, then that becomes an adult problem. It's an adult problem. It is an adult problem. So we have to stop worrying about adult problems and make sure that we're providing the supports that schools need to be successful to serve the populations that they serve. And you can't compare Manual to Shawnee. It's not the same. It's not right that we continue to say Manual's a great school and Shawnee's not when they have a different ingredient list to work from. So I'll pause again, see if anybody wants to add anything to that, and then I'll keep moving because I know we all have places we want to be. Do you guys like those two? Do you like what I put there in bullet number 2 and 3? Would that be something that as a coalition you could sign on to right away?
I mean, I think they're fine. I always suspect there's just more things behind the scenes that I don't understand. Even though like reading them, I think that they're fine. I would want to know more about what if people oppose them, like why and what are the implications of doing that that aren't just, keeping things elite for people, like
Right.
are there any other implications to doing it? And so whenever there's something that I think of as like this year, then it makes me nervous because I'm an implication person, because I always want to make sure I can see out into like all the options that of things that it would impact.
Sure.
But on paper, I feel like that those should be things that they could do. I just would like to get more information on what the implications would be.
Well, and the best way to find out what people's objections are is to float the ideas.
Right.
And, it doesn't mean that we're not bendable and reasonable. If somebody comes back and says, oh, that's going to disqualify us for federal funding. Okay, good to know,
Right.
So that being said, we can maybe even try to float them a little bit before we come out with a hard list and see what people say and what kind of reactions we get. And then the next bullet I have is the REAP to identify the disparities and level the playing fields for schools that lack strong parent and community supports, NTI access, truancy, etc. That maybe is something we can do before we get to a vote, at least get the district to look like they're going to cooperate with us. But if not, I think it needs to be a demand, because I don't know how we can possibly address the disparities in our schools if we haven't quantified and identified them all. And I think doing a REAP on the entire student assignment plan is one way to do that. And we talked about this earlier about schools, magnet only schools, no more elite magnet onlys, take on or resides. If it's not dismantling it magnet completely, because again, we know that's not really going to happen. But if they each were required to have 10% of their population be from their community, and that's in addition to and above those who had to go through all the regular hoops, right? And they also should. I think schools like Manual should also have a zip code requirement. They don't even have a good race. Their race makeup doesn't even match the district, and we should be pressing on them to do a better job of meeting the district makeup, reflecting the district makeup, but then also zip codes, because we know that not all race alone is not going to tell you everything you need to know about the makeup of a school. And so elementary school clusters, we got feedback that when they changed it to 13 clusters, that messed a lot of people up. And I went to a lot of the student assignment committee meetings, and that was a common discussion, is we need to switch it back to the 6 clusters. And that didn't even make it out of the committee, and I don't know why. but that is something that we've been hearing. Community schools, not neighborhood schools. When Greg was talking about neighborhood schools, there is a difference in the definition between the two, and we want community schools. The community schools is actually part of the demand safe schools list as well. So we already agreed that we support that when we did our icebreaker. And I think I've covered everything on the examples of proposed changes. Let me look at some notes and see if you guys brought anything else up that I want to add to this, or if you see anything that you think I should add. I wrote down to find out how many seats the magnet schools have. We need great schools in the West End, and I don't think I wrote that, but it needs to be, it's obvious that the schools in the West End need to be better than the rest of the district so that we don't have trouble filling the schools. And then I wrote down bus both ways to integrate based on what Greg was saying. And I guess that's part of the flip the script one, the first one, but we could soften that a little bit. I like to throw things out there and scare people because then everybody's happy that we got something in the middle. So we can work on the language around how to flip the script if we decide that we want to go that route. Anything else that I also started writing down just cautions. I think we need a slide for cautions. And like what Cherie was talking about, just what are the unknowns. I also wrote that parents' fears are based on their personal reactions first, and that's understandable. So we have to be cautious about how we present these demands so that they don't get dismissed out of hand. We fear an exodus to the privates or even to the suburbs, so we have to keep that in mind. We don't want to feed into the privatizer agenda. And then also we don't want to chip away at things that were designed to create equity without taking something back. And that's one of my concerns about the dual resides plan, is that it really just works to dismantle things that benefit some without necessarily having stops in place to protect it. So I'm going to pause again, see if you guys have anything else you want to add. So do you feel like we're headed down a path that we could build a coalition around and start to take our ideas and put them on paper and maybe write an opinion letter to the paper addressing the board with some of these concerns and explaining why we feel the way we do in addition to what those demands are? Do you feel comfortable that you could take this message to your colleagues and organizations that you belong to and get sign on to put logos on a web page that would say these are the things that we support? Like, are you seeing things that you feel like we have a shot at coming to some kind of consensus before August 18th so that we don't just take what they give us? Any head nods or getting some head nods? Okay. If anyone has a no, speak up, tell me. Otherwise, I'm gonna just keep going. All right, so now I've made another slide about examples of future demands because right now our most immediate concerns, I flip back to the first slide, our immediate concerns are student assignment. But as we talked about, root cause issues, you can't just fix student assignment. You can't just build a school in the West End. You can't just blah, blah, blah. We have to build a bigger picture and a longer term view. And so I wrote down some other examples of future demands. The items that are on the demand safe schools list is a perfect starting point to say, and we also like these things. You know, we don't have to say it yet, but this is a negotiating process, and there will be future opportunities to add and subtract from the list. And so I I want to throw everything that I know about that's been brought to my attention through these different conversations that I've been participating in. I want to throw them out there and we see what sticks. And divesting and investing divesting racist funding priorities. I should reword that so it doesn't look like we're investing in them. But I made 4 little sub-bullets of common themes that really demonstrate, like the district needs to do these things sooner rather than later, like before November, because why would we continue to support a tax increase if you're still wasting money on things that we know are harmful? So policing in schools is something that they could divest from right away, especially in this climate. The public sees why we don't want police in schools anymore. We want a safe return to schools, and a safe return to schools is not just COVID related, but also police related. And so that's part of a safe return to schools message, as well as a funding message. And then reduce the top heavy administration. We know the district still has some room to improve in that area, and abolish standardized testing. We need to spend our resources and time and focus on building knowledge and not teaching to the test. And then also just focusing on finding new revenues elsewhere, looking for corporations that are getting tax cuts that they shouldn't, especially down around Churchill Downs. Kumar Rashad spoke about Churchill Downs sin, if you will, and getting them to take better responsibility of the community and care for the community that they exist in. I was looking for a better word, but it's not coming to me right now. But that they take advantage of. And Kenyatta typed something, so let me see. She says she's been trying to engage Jason Nemes to relook at the community response to police in schools. Good. He's trying to be an ally. I don't trust him still, but that's okay. So the next bullet I have is trauma-informed diagnoses and restorative practices. Just best practices in our schools. We know that we need to focus on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and not testing, and not over-policing, and not punitive responses to the challenges that we face. And back, I want to say something else about Jason Nemes, by the way. He wrote a bill that we worked with him on to allow parents to opt out of high-stakes tests, and he chickened out. He never actually brought it forward. So we can keep pressure on him to do that as well. So safe and culturally competent curriculum, classroom and schools. We know what that means, and I wrote safe in caps just to reiterate the safety is not just COVID, but punitive responses to behavior and discipline. The ratios is another possible, something that we need to say. We need smaller class sizes. We need mental health counselors. We need art, music. I have pop-up boxes all over my screen, so I can't see my own slides. Sorry. We need REAP to measure the key metrics to ensure equitably to ensure that everything is equitably available across all schools. And this can be everything from who has playgrounds, and those of us who have attended nice schools, well-funded, well-resourced, community-engaged schools for most of our lives, tend to assume that all schools are like our schools. And I see this a lot in Dear JCPS. In our closed group, a parent will come out and say, we need to do so-and-so. And then they'll get jumped on right away. Oh, everybody already does that, and it's not true. Not everybody does that. The disparities are gaping. So we need more studies and examples to continue to highlight these disparities, to raise the awareness. And if we don't measure it, we certainly are never going to be able to share. The emphasis on test scores. I know I repeated myself there. I guess not just abolishing the standardized testing for funding purposes, but then the emphasis on it as well, because that's what causes adults to behave badly, and instead focus on the knowledge building and the needs. I just reiterated that again. And then attract and retain high quality teachers in low performing schools. That'll be a natural effect. If we accomplish all these other things, quality teachers will want to come and stay in these low performing schools. It won't be measured as low performing anymore because we're not going to focus on that. And then protections from gentrification of West End neighborhoods as the investment in schools increase. It's just something we need to keep an eye on and talk to the experts about. Again, kind of to Cherie's point, the things we don't know. We know there are things going on behind the scenes, and we don't want to feed into it accidentally and cause unintended consequences because we just went out and built a whole bunch of really great schools in the West End, and then boom, the neighborhood gets gentrified. So, just be cognizant of those types of things. And then the coalition functions. What we will do as a coalition, we will fundraise, and we will have we will ask people to donate or to buy t-shirts or buy yard signs or get corporate grants or whatever we need to do to help pay for the marketing and communication of these demands down the road. This doesn't have to be part of the student assignment plan. This is as it continues to grow and evolve, because we're not going to be done on August 18th is what I'm getting at. And we're going to recruit other organizations, spokespeople, signatures, to sign on to our letters and our lists of demands. We're going to hold community forums and seek feedback and ask to speak in other groups' meetings, especially in, if somebody is part of a Norton Commons parent group, ask us to come out. If you're part of a PTA, not come out, but ask us to come on the Zoom and just answer these questions and talk, get the dialogue going. Talk about race. In fact, I need to explicitly say that because we do need to talk about race and make it part of our intentional work. So, develop messaging and strategies and debunk the rumors. Control the narrative, because as I mentioned earlier, the district is forming its own 501c4 to do fundraising and to communicate the tax increase. And they're going to pick their own steering committee and appoint who is qualified to speak on behalf of the tax increase and shut out authentic grassroots groups. They're already doing that. Dear JCPS has left AROS, the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, because of the gatekeeping and tone policing and whitewashing, and now a demand that member organizations support the tax increase unconditionally. That's the actual language that was used in the latest round of emails as we sit back and wait for the district to form their own 501c4 and appoint a steering committee. And I don't advocate, I don't organize that way. I don't wait until the district tells me that I have permission to speak. That's never worked in any of the experiences that I've had. So we're going to look for people who are basically going to sign on with us and say we support the tax increase as long as, once we get to that, like I'm saying, first we got to get past the student assignment hurdle. But these are all what this coalition building is long-term looking at. We cultivate a base of supporters through surveys and petitions or pledges. We're going to call it a pledge to support our demands. And that's how we build our email list. This is a political campaign, and we run it just like we were if we were somebody running for office. We have to cultivate the donations. We have to cultivate our base of supporters, and then continue to communicate and look for volunteers and do that kind of work. We're going to develop a list of demands, obviously, and use our leverage to influence decision makers. We're going to promote the tax increase conditionally based on the above. I just mentioned that. So the next one, we're going to encourage decision makers to pass. I put people's agenda in quotes because I also serve on the Kentucky Alliance board, and the Kentucky Alliance has been a coalition building organization since it was founded back in the 70s. And is everybody familiar with the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression? So they have a people's agenda that they created 20 some odd years ago, maybe, that needs to be revamped and resurrected. And it's not targeted to JCPS issues. It was targeted toward Metro government and the budget, the Metro budget. But in conversations with other board members, the Alliance is working on revamping the people's agenda and adding the JCPS demands of their organization, of our organization, of the Kentucky Alliance organization, to this people's agenda. And so getting the school board to acknowledge this list of demands, promises, what have you. It's symbolic in nature. It's not enforceable by law. You can't make the board spend money a certain way based on a resolution, but it would go a long way, I think, toward the symbolism and getting the dialogue going and helping people understand why the district needs to make these changes and earn the Black vote in particular. And Tyra Walker is one of the co-chairs with the Kentucky Alliance, and she and I have been talking with Dr. Polio. He has not been exactly receptive to the idea yet, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to encourage him to become receptive between now and November. So this is just another example of some of the things that we can do to use that leverage, and also speak at board meetings, write opinion letters, do email campaigns. So these are the types of things that we can do to encourage decision makers to accept our list of demands, and do it in a way that gives us confidence that we should stand with them on the tax increase. So, and lastly, notify our base. So as we build our base between now and November, we continue to communicate with them. And if we don't feel satisfied that the district is going to spend the money the way that it needs to be spent to support the changes to student assignment and to dismantle, ultimately, our goal is to ultimately dismantle structural racism in JCPS. And so if we all agree to that, then really the next steps are how. And Kimberly is calling me. I don't know if she wants to try to get back on the call. Let me just text her, sorry. So again, it's possible that we may just say, sorry, you didn't earn our support. And as a coalition, are we willing to take such a radical stance? And that, again, would be up to the coalition members. We're forming a coalition that we have collectively and democratically come up with a list of demands, and those who sign on are agreeing to this list of demands. So it's not going to be some surprise that's going to change on you later or anything like that. We can continue to shape it and develop it democratically as we go, because we are negotiating. So there are going to be things that add and subtract, and as a coalition, we get to decide how we feel about those things. And between now and really by September 29th, because that's the last board meeting that takes place, where they can probably affect change in time for us to start getting word out to voters, because the mail-in ballots start going in like October 13th. People are going to start mailing in their ballots, and so we can still continue to make demands up until Election Day if that's what we feel. But the longer they take to meet our demands to the point where we're satisfied that we can support a tax increase, then the greater chance that their tax increase isn't going to pass. So they want this tax increase. Personally, I want this tax increase. I really want, I've been speaking at board meetings. I know public education is underfunded. I want our teachers to be paid well. I don't want our district to continue to have to face the threat of privatization and other resources being siphoned away, but I also recognize that we're not there yet, and we may never get there. And there are Black and Black allied organizations that have flat out said we don't support a tax increase, and it's our job. It's our job, even as this coalition, to earn that vote, to get out in the community and make demands on our district, and find out and get feedback and elevate those concerns from the community to the district so that they understand that they cannot take the Black vote for granted. And Kimberly's back. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi.
And let me see what else is on the next slides. So key dates and actions. The board is expected to vote on the student assignment plan on August 18th. The Kentucky Alliance Education Committee has been kind of stagnant just because there's been so many demands on everyone's time and attention and energy right now. But we agreed at our last board meeting to start meeting Mondays again at 4:30. So we have 2 education committee meetings that will be held via Zoom between now and the student assignment plan meeting. So that will be a great space to do work on this list of demands and continue to fine tune and do our actions and get our signatures and whatever we agree to do. But I don't want to wait until then to get started. If we can do some of this work now, delegate some of the things that people are willing to do, and communicate through the messenger chat and various ways to keep these things moving. If we're in agreement that we're ready to do so, then I would like to suggest that we keep this moving. Some of us have already been working together. So Morgan and Kenyatta are part of the Stand with JCPS coalition that we started, 3 months ago. And it was intended to support the tax increase conditionally. But that language just kind of was nebulously vague and didn't really create that divide until we ran into the issues with Eros derailing the work that we were doing, and pretty much put everything on hold. And now we are continuing to keep it on hold. We put it on hold for the election, and because our resources were also spread thin. But we do have a committee that's been working on this pledge. So we have a pledge that we could just dust off and see if we agree to the language and get that out there and start going with it. I don't know if we agree that Stand with JCPS is the right hashtag anymore, because it does sound unconditional, and we are not an unconditional coalition. So we can brainstorm if we want to come up with some other kind of name. But I put these screenshots in here just because I want you guys to know that I'm not making this up. He literally scolded us and said, we all agreed to support the tax increase unconditionally. And when I asked for where in the minutes it said the word unconditionally, that was not able to be produced. And when I suggested that he recanvass the members, because at least 3 of the organization, there's 7 member organizations, at least 3 of us have been actively working on this pledge. So I suggested we put it up for another vote, and that never happened. So since I couldn't have any accountability, and I want to be an allied organization to the groups that I've been meeting with and speaking with, I let them know that Dear JCPS was withdrawing from Eros, which, by the way, was started by JCTA 3 years ago, and the chairman was appointed, and there's never been any election, and this isn't the first time he's derailed our work. And so, fool me once, shame on how's that go? Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right, yes. Okay, so this was the thrice time that I've been fooled, and so I just said we're withdrawing from the organization, and I've also submitted a recommendation to the Kentucky Alliance to do the same. So my hope is Kentucky Alliance will come over and be part of our coalition. Dear JCPS will be part of our coalition. LSurge has been part of our coalition. GLABC had signed on. With all this political back and forth, I'm not exactly sure where they stand. I would definitely want to go back to them and let them know that that we're taking a new direction, but GLABC is possibly aligned with us. Louisville PTO, which is Latasha Harrison is the president of Louisville PTO, which is another organization that was formed because the PTA was pushing out Black parents from local PTAs and replacing them with white teachers. And the 15th District PTA was complicit in doing these things. And so she created the PTO to be an organization to support schools that don't have strong PTAs. And she's on board with this work as well. And who else did I leave out? Oh, Kentucky Educators United hopefully would be on board. Greg is with KU, as is Yvonne. That's the call they had to go off and do, I think. Sorry, I'm doing so much talking. I just want to throw all this out there, see what you guys think, and then let's make it better. I'm not territorial over any of these ideas. I just feel like we're running out of time, and unless somebody else is already doing this work, I can only be responsible for myself. So I just threw something together and hope that others think that it's something we can make better and build on and grow. Some of the actions we can take besides the Alliance Committee meeting, we can solicit people to send 3-minute videos, just like you were speaking at a board meeting, like make a video and submit it, and we'll publicize it, because unfortunately during COVID, you have to write a letter, and I don't even know if they read your letter. I think they just include it in the meeting minutes. So that's not acceptable. Our concerns need to be visible. They need to be broadcast, and not just ours. If other people have thoughts on student assignment, we'll share them too, because as Yvonne likes to say, we is better than me, and the more people who come to the table are going to bring better ideas, more diverse ideas, and the synergies that we get from finding solutions that work for everyone instead of making people compromise is the ultimate goal. We can do a survey to ask people to prioritize these. You know, maybe we don't finalize our demands until we get some survey feedback and know what is most important to people outside of this coalition. We need to do press releases and press conferences and contact the media. And by media, I mean national media. Kimberly and I actually had a call earlier today with a researcher from Soledad O'Brien. So they are interested in what we're working on. And even if locally we don't seem to always get it, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this slideshow, we're on a national stage and all eyes are on Kentucky, and we need to seize that and use that as the leverage, as the crowbar to really just flip everything on its head and build if you could close your eyes and build a student assignment plan from scratch, like these are the kinds of conversations, instead of tweaking something that is systemically racist. What the heck? You know, if we could wipe the slate clean, musical chairs, stop the music, and everybody tell us, you know, what that plan looks like, and then how do we make it better from there. That's what these types of conversations should look like. And then draft a letter to the Board of Education and get people to sign it, and have a pledge to capture signatures. And then as we approach November 3rd, this is all still tied to the tax increase, because we can't build the schools in the West End. Even if the board approves the student assignment plan that includes new schools in the West End, none of this is official until we get this tax increase. So those are the dates that I mentioned earlier. Early voting starting on October 13th, and the final board meeting before that being September 29th if we're working backwards. So we really have between now and August 18th to get our student assignment thoughts out there first, and then continue to build on the list of what those demands that tie into a successful student assignment plan look like between now and the election. And I just have some notes on forming a 501c4 because I think we should too. And then just some next steps for us to talk about. I'm gonna stop talking and see see if anybody else wants to say anything. Kimberly, you're on. Or not. Here she comes.
Yes, ma'am.
So you had to leave, but now you're back. You missed the middle slides, but you and I have been talking quite a bit about all this. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
Go to somebody else. I'm trying to catch up.
Okay. I'll go back to the slide with the example proposed changes so you can kind of digest that for a minute. While we wait and see if anybody else wants to go. Sherry has to go. Thank you, Cherie. Sorry, I said it wrong again. Thank you, Cherie, for joining us. Kenyatta. What do you think?
So how do we get true equity? Because just from what I've seen, it's a compliance thing, it's a check mark. And so, like, to me, this is my own personal opinion, a check mark, like if I'm gonna go through the motions, I'd rather really do it instead of just complying and looking like that we're really making change when we're not. From my experiences, you know, at my school that I was at, we just basically wrote down a lot of good stuff that we were going to do, but it was never followed through with. And one person cannot make things happen to change equity for the entire school by themselves. And so whenever I would bring up equity, it seemed that nobody really wanted to talk about it, even though we were at, you know, a school with 97% minorities. So, like, what can we do, or what, even if it's something small, to move the needle is what I'm asking, so that schools have to, like, because now it's at a point where we have to make the necessary changes to make sure that all students, and Black students in particular, because they're the ones that have been left behind, are treated equitably.
So that particular bullet, what I was communicating there is that this proposal for dual resides and removing the push out of traditional schools is really just inching towards equality. It's not even equity. It's equality. If you're gonna say, okay, now people in the West End, magically you can now attend school close to your home, just like everybody else has been able to do all of their lives. Okay, isn't that equitable? No, actually that's not. That would be equal, right? You know, the picture of equal versus equality or equity. If we wanted true equity, then we would need to literally flip the script. We would need to have more people being bused from east to west and from south to west than the other way around. And so I wrote down flip the script just to kind of start with the most radical idea. If we came out with a proposal that said, okay, everybody, we're going to start busing from east to west to south to west, you know, the reaction that we would get is going to be some whiplash kind of reactions, but it's a good conversation to have because it brings people to the table who might have felt like they were safe and didn't have to really care or worry about any of this because suddenly an East End family might, oh shoot, they're going to bus my junior down to the West End or whatever. And so it at least brings people to the table to offer other solutions. And then on top of that, it puts people in an uncomfortable position to say, you can't do that to my child. And then we respond with, well, why was it okay that we've been doing it to Black children all these years? You know, so it's really more of a conversation starter. I don't want to go so far as call it an idle threat, because I do think it's something we should strive for, maybe as part of a 10-year goal. And that's my very bottom bullet. No more pockets of extremes. We set a student mix ratio at each school of plus or minus 15%, that your school needs to look like the district. And if you don't achieve that, then we start investing in the low performing schools, the ones that have higher pockets of poverty and trauma, et cetera. We give them smaller class sizes. We give them more counselors. We give them play-based learning or whatever that would make an East End parent go, well, I want that. And then the answer to that East End parent is, you can have that. Come on down. Come on down to the West End school. You can have a late start time for your high schooler, or whatever it is that the people are clamoring for. Let's put that in the schools that have the least equitable distribution of populations, for lack of a better term, and see if it doesn't solve itself. And then if it still doesn't solve itself in 10 years, then we say in 10 years, we're going to force bus people from east to west or south to west. And so as you see that deadline looming, then people start cooperating and figuring out a better way to achieve it, so it's on their terms. Because what happens is, if you don't decide, if you don't make decisions on how to address problems in your community, then those decisions get made for you. And that's where we are. We're a district of complicity and fear. Oh my gosh, no one will ever do that, so we can't even bring it up. People will go to private schools. People will go to the suburbs. My response to that is, bye, let them. If they weren't truly committed to our district in the first place, then why do we cater to them if they're taking more than they give? But I think that a lot of that is bluffing, and we call their bluff. I think a lot of it is a learning opportunity, and we bring them into the conversation. We're on the right side of history. This is an easy conversation to have. We just have to get people out of their bubbles long enough to hear it. And I'm up for that challenge all day long. I think we have an obligation to have that conversation before the tax increase is voted on in November, because otherwise the narratives just continue to perpetuate. We still run into people that say end busing and don't understand that we don't have the schools in the West End, or what our challenges are. So let's get everything out there in the open. And if the tax increase doesn't pass, it puts a stop to those people that say end busing, because we say, well, we gave you the chance and you didn't vote for it. So, we have to be having the other side of the coin conversations just to end up in the middle. And what we tend to do is try to talk to the middle, and then we inch toward equity, but while they're giving us this and that here and there, they're taking something away so that it's a net neutral result. It's a shell game. So let's go big or go home with this stuff. And yes, it's not just checking the box. I tend to be a Pollyanna. I tend to think that we can do all this just because we want to, and we can, and we care. But it needs measures in place. It needs eyeballs. It needs commitments. It needs, in one of these slides, I talked about the people's agenda. The Kentucky Alliance is working on revamping their people's agenda, and it can include this list of demands that we come up with, and go before the school board and ask them to pass it as a resolution that they support these demands. And so it's a symbolic gesture. It's not necessarily enforceable by law, but it's not a good look if 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, the district moves away from some of these things that they committed to us. When we brought the Black voters, basically, we earned the Black vote, and now you want to take it away? That's going to create all kinds of pushback. So, and besides, the alternative is to do nothing, and to me, that's not an option either. So, I don't.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, the situation is, first, the South End schools are just as bad, almost. I mean, they would be a close second to the worst in the district,
Yes.
most of them.
Yes.
So it's not like the South End schools are doing great either.
Correct.
And then you have the whole thing. I used to be one of those people that say the system is broke. And so now I know that the system is not broke. It's designed to do what it's doing.
Right.
And that is to lead Black kids from it's the school to prison pipeline. And it's doing exactly that. And so you can't fix a system that is doing what it was designed to do. It just has to be totally redesigned.
I am with you on that. And in fact, I think that's why we deserve these kinds of demands to be met by the district. And if they're not willing to meet them, then we don't support the tax increase and we burn it all down. I mean, I won't say that out loud publicly, but
just like NTI is the perfect time to get all the first grade teachers in the district to be able to collaborate with each other, and all the second grade teachers, and so on and so forth, but yet we're not doing that. I looked at that board meeting last night, and I think it was only like 300 and something people had viewed it after it had aired, because I was looking at it like 10 o'clock last night. Why come more people? It really shocked me that more taxpayers are not looking at these board meetings and asking their board members who they voted in, like, you didn't ask this question, you didn't ask that question, because like we voted them in, and like they're just going along with whatever is presented almost.
you know, it's interesting you say that, because I tried to get I didn't get a chance to watch the board meeting last night, but I tried to get a message to some of the board members. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not on their good list right now. But because I'm an agitator, and we talked about that earlier too, but they'll try to discredit you. People will try to discredit you if you, and I didn't do anything to them. I haven't done anything to them personally, but other groups are saying things about me right now because I've tried to make their lives a little bit more difficult. And anyway, so I try to get a message to a couple of board members to ask about the Ballard donation, and simply say what measures are in place. It was to ask if a REAP had ever been done on monies that are donated to the schools. And I don't know if anybody asked that question, but I did try to get it at least planted with a board member. And they're still cautious about what they're willing to challenge, because they're either up for re-election or have a higher ambition, or just don't like being treated the way that I don't like being treated either, but that I allow myself to be treated, I guess. And so they're not pushing back like they should, and that is our fault. That is up to us to put pressure on our board members and do it collectively. I can only do so much because, you know, like I said, I'm on the outs with them. But if we all rise up, they can't be mad at all of us, you know, and we get everyone to rise up by raising awareness and using our channels and getting our message out. And, you know, we've been successful. Don't underestimate us. We've gotten rid of board members. We got rid of David Jones. I mean, come on. And then we were able to get rid of Hargens because we got rid of David Jones. And then at the state level, we've prevented scholarship tax credits and vouchers and charter schools, and prevented so far a state takeover. And yet we still live in this fear of a state takeover instead of just, God bless it, doing what we know is right for kids. Just do what's freaking right for kids and let the chips fall where they may. It's that simple. But yes, to your point, Kimberly, if we don't feel like the district can do this work because it's doing what it was designed to do, then we pull out our support for the tax increase and we let it burn. Because, you know, that's already happening anyway. This is another point I want to make. It's already happening anyway because people, I don't know if you know Tia Edison, and I don't want to talk about her without her here to explain any of her positions, but I know she's not in favor of a tax increase, and she's a pretty influential person over me and my opinion. I do too. And so I really try to go to her as my my reality check when I'm trying to understand things or think things through. She's been a resource for me, a great resource, and so I really value her opinion. And I know that she's not in favor of the tax increase, and she would rather build church schools. Put kids in right now. What we're doing for NTI, because the district isn't doing a good job, the Black community takes care of itself, and that's what's happening right now. So it's already a risk. And charter schools are going to come because we fucked this up so bad. And I'm recording, so I shouldn't cuss, but dang it, it's true. And we're not going to be able to protect our public schools forever if we can't get our act together. And we're just prolonging the inevitable. So let's rip off the Band-Aids. Let's take advantage of this disaster that has happened, because the privatizers are taking advantage of it. So we need to too, and that's be radical. And it's really not even radical. Somebody pointed out that just being moral is considered radical these days. And no, let's have a moral agenda and do what's best for kids and rebuild it while we have the opportunity to reprioritize funding and redefine learning. Like this pandemic and the movement for Black Lives and the fact that we're in the front row, we have front row seats to all of this because we're Louisville, Kentucky. Let's seize the time. And I'm back to my Bobby Seale quote. So, and on that note,
well, I'm against the tax increase because I know for a fact that they have taken like resource teachers at the district level and moved them to be like they're under schools when they're really not. They're really still district employees, but they moved them to hide them so that they can go for this tax increase. And so with that, it makes me think that if you have to hide people and where they're assigned to, like, what's really going on here? And why come we're not telling the truth? And why are we playing these little games?
Exactly. And that's the kind of shiggity that we can't let continue. And by the way, I had a call with the district investigator, Jody Wren, this morning. And I went through an entire list of things that I've been bringing to the district's attention, to Marty's attention in particular, for 2 or more years. And they continue to be, kicked down the road and this and that and handled but not handled. And I feel like I've got some pretty significant documentation at this point that I didn't really threaten, but I did, because I said, I'm bringing these things to your attention because the media, we're going to be going to the media if it's not addressed, because it needs to be addressed. And so I think I did a better job. I'd have to go back and remember how that conversation ended, but I left it. Kimberly, I told you about it, right? What did I say to her? Do you remember? Because I thought I was so proud of myself. Because I threatened, but in such a nice way. It was like, okay, well, you had your chance.
Miss Dean Bacon wanted to talk.
Kenyatta, what do you want to say?
I went ahead and put it in the message. I was just saying that I like a lot of your thoughts on the changes or the proposed changes to the student assignment plan. I love your thoughts on other things moving forward. I definitely think what Cherie said aligns with how I think as far as wanting to see what the implications of such changes could be. And I think that that's where, conversation can and lead us, and we can all look at different ways of how things could affect, what the domino effect is on certain changes that are made. But also, I do believe that, if we're all talking, no action, that's not going to help anything either. We can go round and round the merry-go-bush as much as we want to, and if we never make a stab at making our public school system here more effective for all of our students, then we're just going to keep on passing through generations of children who are not going to have the advantage of an equitable programming. With that, I'm all about trying to get into some good trouble when
I
it
like
comes to stirring the pot, just to see, how we can improve the system, because we know that it's broken, and it needs to be fixed, and we need to be, instead of talking about it needs to be fixed, action has to happen. So I'm all about it, but I literally have been in my seat since 8 o'clock this morning. I'm in an AIS school, so we are officially back full time. And I have not prepared a meal for my family. I've had to go off screen because my daughter had a bike crash a little bit ago, and there was a whole devastated kid over here because she cracked her phone. So so they are in need of my attention. So I just want to say thank you for all that you're doing for us as educators, and for all of our students in our community. It is absolutely in the best interest of everyone involved that we make changes, not just for the kids in the West End, but the kids in the other parts of the city deserve to be a part of that equitable change and see it. Like Ken was telling us about how he benefited from being bused into Coleridge Taylor, and how his experiences, he felt, made him a better person. So I think that the changes could be good both ways. But
I do too.
with that said, I got to take off out of here. Thank you all for everything. I look forward to chatting again.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so we need to end the call. I know we've been on too long anyway. I'm gonna leave you with just this slide of next steps and things that we need to be thinking on. We need to decide what we want to call it. Is it student assignment first was a hashtag we used when we were trying to get them to fund the West End schools instead of the East End schools. That kind of had a nice ring to it. Or we can come up with something completely different, but we need to figure out like what our little catchy phrase is, and look for an organization to take the lead. I like KEU if they would be willing, just because I love the democratic process that they follow to run their meetings and make decisions. And ultimately, I would love it if these demands rolled up into their demands, because this is part of a national teacher movement that is focused on equity in schools, and fits perfectly with what they do. They just don't necessarily know it yet. But if they're not willing, if somebody else is part of an organization, or so far it's just been Dear JCPS and Louisville PTO that have taken the lead, and maybe we just continue with that because I can be responsible for me, and I know Latasha's on board already. But if you guys have a desire or know someone or would really like to see this go in a different direction, I originally wanted the Kentucky Alliance to take the lead on it, and I just can't get them on board yet, and I'm on their board. I've been speaking about it at every single board meeting, and it's it's too much to process. So maybe we don't need a lead organization. I don't know, but I feel like it rolls up under something, and then we each take a piece of it. You know, like we each take our part. Agree on the demands that we're going to come up with, and maybe after this call, when we end, I'll send you I'll send you the survey. I'll create a little survey to see if you are comfortable with the demands. Maybe we can get some kind of consensus of the people that were on the call, and then take it to a broader community, just continue to snowball. We need to survey the community for priorities and fine-tuning the messaging. So that's what I was kind of saying, is we'll take that out to a broader group. Get our orgs to sign on to these demands. We want to see logos on the page, very similar to the Demand Safe Schools website. You know, we want to have a list on our website, what our demands are and who our supporters are. You know, something just like this is what I'm envisioning. Or if they would roll up under theirs, that'd be really great. Reach out to others. So start bringing more people on board, especially people with name recognition who we're meeting with Charles Booker on Friday. I forgot to tell you that. We have a call with Charles Booker on Friday. We're hoping that we can help him see this big picture and get him to speak on some of these issues and make that part of his messaging, so that what we also want to avoid is having thought leaders in our community come out and say, we support the tax increase unconditionally, because that really dismantles our work. So we want to get in the ears of some of these people that have followers, so that they don't sabotage us too soon, especially since we know the district is in the process of creating their own. And agree on our actions that we're going to take. Like, are we going to write letters to the editor? Are we going to do a survey? Are we going to do memes? Are we going to do videos, 3-minute videos, and set those deadlines, and then write an opinion letter and get those signatures out there. And Yvonne is really good at that. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to write a draft, because I think it's easier to edit something that's written as opposed to try to get a group of people together to write something from scratch. And if anybody wants to be in on that committee, that letter drafting committee, let me know. And otherwise, I'm going to say thank you all for coming on tonight. And Kimberly's lips are moving.
All right.
Thank you guys, and I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Family. Love you guys.
Love you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.